Welcome to our tranquil space, a sanctuary designed to help you find the deepest, most complete sleep. All the confusion of the day, all the longing of the heart, all the restless desires just for now. Let them rest outside the door. Now, find a truly comfortable position. Slowly feel each part of your body letting go, releasing the weight of attachment, and gently sinking deeper into the soft mattress. Relax your forehead, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, relax your mind. Tonight, we won't use philosophy to analyze or to argue. We'll use it to ascend. You don't need to try to understand complex dialogues or memorize the forms at all. Simply listen. Allow this voice to wash over you like a gentle, upward current of air, softly soothing your tired spirit. And finally, take a long, deep breath in, and as you exhale, breathe out the shadows, ever so slowly. Let us drift into sleep together, and as your body settles into this quiet peace, let your mind begin a journey out of the flickering cave of the senses and into the clear, calm light of wisdom, alongside the great visionary, Plato. In the stillness between each breath, we will climb the ladder of love, discovering that true affection is not a trap of temptation, but a set of wings for the soul, a transformation that leads you back to your own wholeness. Tonight, we will find beauty together, a pure, unchanging refuge right inside our own minds. Now, let your body rest, and let the journey begin. The story begins not with a kiss, but with a pause. In the bustling streets of Athens, specifically in the year 416 B.C., a man named Socrates is making his way to a dinner party. He is dressed up for the occasion, a rare occurrence, having bathed and put on fresh sandals. Yet, halfway there, he stops. He drifts into a trance, standing alone on a neighbor's porch, lost in deep contemplation while the rest of the guests arrive at the banquet hall. This image of Socrates, suspended between the physical world of the party and the invisible world of his thoughts, serves as the perfect opening metaphor for the Platonic view of love. For Plato, love is precisely this: a suspension, a bridge, a state of being caught between the earthly and the divine. We often mistake love for a destination, a place where we can finally rest and find comfort in another's arms. But the philosophy of the Symposium suggests something far more radical. Love is not a place to rest. It is a ladder to climb. It is not a sedative for the soul, but a stimulant designed to wake us up from the slumber of ordinary existence. To understand this transformation, we must first look at the setting in which this wisdom was revealed. The dialogue takes place at the home of Agathon, a young playwright who has just won his first major victory at the Lenaea festival. Historical fact: the Lenaea was one of the lesser dramatic festivals of ancient Athens, held in the winter month of Gamaliel, dedicated to Dionysus. While the Great Dionysia was the main event for tragedies, the Lenaea was often more intimate, focused on comedies and experimental works, making it a fitting backdrop for a conversation that blends humor with profound revelation. The guests at Agathon's house are the cultural elite of Athens' playwrights, physicians, aristocrats, and philosophers. They are the influencers of their day, reclining on couches, ready to celebrate. However, This gathering is different from the usual revelry. The text reveals a rare detail. The guests are all nursing severe hangovers from the previous night's victory celebration. Pausanias, one of the attendees, suggests that they skip the heavy drinking because he is still feeling the effects of yesterday's excess. The group agrees to dismiss the flute-girl the entertainment usually hired to provide background music and sensual distraction so that they might entertain themselves with conversation instead. This decision is crucial. By sending away the flute-girl and refusing the wine, they symbolically reject the pleasures of the senses to make room for the pleasures of the mind. They clear the air for a discussion on Eros, the god of love. This pivot from physical intoxication to intellectual exploration sets the stage for our first major lesson. In the modern world, we treat love as an emotion that happens to us. We fall in love, implying a loss of control, a descent into a sweet madness where we are passive recipients of affection. We measure love by how it makes us feel. Do we feel safe? Do we feel desired? Do we feel happy? But the Platonic perspective shifts the focus entirely. Through the voice of Diotima, a priestess who taught Socrates everything he knows about love, we learn that love is not about being loved. It is about being a lover. Diotima challenges Socrates, who initially believes that love is a great and beautiful god. She corrects him, arguing that love is not beautiful itself. Rather, love is the desire for the beautiful. One does not desire what one already possesses. Therefore, if love desires beauty and goodness, love must lack these things. This deconstruction is startling. It redefines Eros not as a benevolent figure of fullness, but as a spirit of active, desperate hunger. Love is a daimon, a spirit that exists in the space between the gods and humans, bridging the gap between mortality and immortality. As the text states, he is a mean between wise and ignorant, for wisdom is a most beautiful thing, and love is of the beautiful, and therefore love is also a philosopher or lover of wisdom, and being a lover of wisdom is in a mean between the wise and the ignorant. This definition changes everything. If love is a lack, a hunger, and a bridge, then it is inherently a tool for movement. When we view love as a temptation, we see it as something that distracts us from our goals or complicates our lives with drama and desire. But when we view love as a transformation, we realize that the intense energy of attraction is actually the fuel for our evolution. The ache you feel for another person is not merely a biological trick to ensure reproduction. It is the soul's recognition of a quality it needs to acquire. Consider the implications of this for our daily lives. When we encounter someone who captivates us, our default reaction is to possess them. We want to secure their attention, lock down a commitment, and integrate them into our lives. We fixate on the object of our love. But Plato invites us to look at the mechanism of love. Why does this specific person ignite this fire? Usually, it is because they represent a beauty or a virtue that we are currently lacking. The attraction is a call to action. It is a signal that there is work to be done within ourselves. This perspective protects us from the cynicism that often accompanies modern dating. We live in an era of swiping, where potential partners are evaluated like products in a catalog. If a product is defective or doesn't bring immediate gratification, it is discarded. This consumerist approach leads to a profound hollowness because it treats love as a commodity to be consumed rather than a discipline to be practiced. The guests at Agathon's party, despite their hangovers and their egos, understood that Eros was a force worthy of serious analysis, not just a recreational activity. By dismissing the flute-girl, silencing the external noise, they allowed themselves to hear the internal voice of the logos reason. In your own life, dismissing the flute-girl might mean turning off the romantic comedies that sell an unrealistic version of happily ever after. It might mean silencing the societal pressure to be part of a couple just for the sake of status. It means creating a quiet space where you can ask the difficult questions. What is my love driving me toward? Is it driving me toward possession, jealousy, and fear? Or is it driving me toward courage, creativity, and self-improvement? The transformation begins when we stop asking, does this person love me, and start asking, what is this love trying to teach me? The former question keeps us trapped in the role of a passive child waiting for validation. The latter question elevates us to the role of a philosopher, actively engaging with the divine mystery of connection. The journey we are about to undertake in this series will trace the path of this latter. We will start, as humans must, with the body, the initial spark of physical attraction. But we will not stay there. We will see how that spark is meant to kindle a larger fire, one that illuminates the mind and eventually warms the soul. We will move from the love of one to the love of two to the love of many, and finally to the love of the good itself. Socrates eventually entered the party, taking his place beside Agathon. He did not remain on the porch forever. This is crucial. Platonic love is not about renouncing the world and living in a cave. It is about entering the party of life, engaging with others, and feeling the full force of human emotion, but doing so with a secret knowledge, the knowledge that every beautiful face, every kind gesture, and every moment of connection is a step on a staircase leading somewhere higher. As we conclude this first section, let us adopt the mindset of the guests at that ancient banquet. Let us set aside our metaphorical hangovers, our past heartbreaks, our cynical disappointments, our fatigue from failed relationships. Let us clear the room of distractions. We are here to re-examine the most powerful force in our lives, not as a trap that ensnares us, but as a set of wings designed to lift us up. The climb is not easy, and the air gets thinner as we ascend, but the view, as Diotima promises, is worth every step. As the evening progresses in the house of Agathon, the conversation shifts from the polite, formal eulogies of the earlier speakers to something far more visceral and imaginative. We arrive now at one of the most famous, yet often misunderstood, moments in Western literature, the speech of Aristophanes. To understand the profound psychological ache that drives us toward romance, we must listen to the comedian. It is a peculiar irony of the Symposium that the deepest insight into human pain comes from the man whose profession is to make people laugh. However, before Aristophanes can speak, a very human interruption occurs. Rare detail. The text records that Aristophanes is seized by a sudden, violent bout of hiccups. It is so severe that he cannot speak his turn and must trade places with the physician Eryximachus. The doctor prescribes a set of practical cures, holding his breath, gargling water, or, if the spasms persist, tickling his nose to induce a sneeze. This moment is not merely a bit of ancient slapstick. It is Plato's way of reminding us that no matter how high our minds soar toward the divine, we remain tethered to the unpredictable, noisy, and sometimes embarrassing biological machinery of the body. The hiccups serve as a grounding mechanism. a check on human arrogance before the playwright launches into a myth about human arrogance. Once the hiccups subside, Aristophanes begins his tale a myth that attempts to explain the origin of our loneliness. He asks us to imagine a time long before history, when human nature was completely different. In this primordial era, humans were not divided creatures as we are now. They were spherical, round like the planets, and they possessed a terrible power and completeness. These original humans had 4 hands and 4 feet, and 1 head with 2 faces looking in opposite directions. They could walk upright if they chose, but when they wanted to run fast, they would tumble over and over like acrobats, rolling with incredible speed and strength on their 8 limbs. Historical fact: Aristophanes describes 3 distinct genders for these beings: the all-male, descended from the sun; the all-female, descended from the earth; and the androgynous, a combination of both, descended from the moon, since the moon shares the nature of both sun and earth. This classification reflects the ancient Greek cosmological view, where celestial bodies were the parents of terrestrial life, linking our biology directly to the stars. These spherical beings were powerful, too powerful. They were robust and ambitious, so much so that they dared to scale the heavens to attack the gods. Zeus and the other Olympians were faced with a dilemma. They could not destroy the humans with lightning as they had the giants, for that would end the sacrifices and worship the gods depended on. Yet, they could not tolerate such insolence. After much deliberation, Zeus found a solution. He said, "I will cut them in 2. In this way, they will be weaker, and at the same time more profitable to us, for their number will be increased." And so, the great surgery began. Zeus cut the humans in half, like a sorb apple which is halved for pickling. As Aristophanes vividly describes, he tasked Apollo, the god of healing, with patching them up. Apollo gathered the loose skin from the cut side and pulled it all together at the center of the belly, tying it in a knot which we now call the navel. He smoothed out the wrinkles of the skin, shaping the chest and the torso, but he left the navel specifically as a permanent reminder of our ancient wound, a scar to keep us humble, a memory of the time we were sliced apart. The aftermath of this separation was devastating. The 2 halves, now separate beings, were consumed by a desperate longing for their other part. They ran toward each other, flinging their arms around one another, weaving themselves together in a frantic attempt to grow back into one. They began to die of hunger and inactivity because they refused to do anything apart. They were paralyzed by their need for fusion. Zeus, taking pity on them, moved their reproductive organs to the front, for previously they were on the back, allowing them to generate new life through their embrace, or at least to find satisfaction and rest so they could return to the business of living. This myth, while fantastical, offers a piercing diagnosis of the human condition. It suggests that our feeling of incompleteness is not a delusion, but a structural reality. We are, quite literally, walking wounds. Aristophanes concludes that love is simply the name we give to the desire and pursuit of the whole. When we find that person who matches us, our other half, we are struck by an overwhelming sense of familiarity and belonging. We feel that we have finally returned home after a long exile. This perspective resonates deeply with our modern concept of the soulmate. It validates the intensity of our romantic cravings. It tells us that the anxiety we feel when we are alone is not a weakness, but a biological memory of a time when we were complete. It reframes our search for a partner not as a luxury, but as a reconstruction project. We are trying to heal the incision Zeus made eons ago. However, from the perspective of love as transformation, Aristophanes' speech, while beautiful, contains a dangerous trap. It presents love as a remedy for a past tragedy rather than a path to a future evolution. If we accept this myth as the ultimate truth, we are condemned to view love as dependency. We become convinced that we are broken fragments who cannot function until we find a specific external savior to glue us back together. This mindset leads to the temptation aspect of love, the temptation to cling, to possess, and to merge so completely that we lose our individual identities. Notice the imagery Aristophanes uses. The lovers want to be melted into one, so that even in death they are not divided. While this sounds romantic, in practice, it is a form of mutual annihilation. It is the logic of codependency. If you believe you are only half a person, you will inevitably burden your partner with the impossible task of completing you. You will look to them to provide the stability, the confidence, and the happiness that you feel you lack. And when they inevitably fail, because no human can play the role of a missing limb forever, you will feel betrayed. The Platonic ascent requires us to acknowledge the truth in Aristophanes' story. The pain of separation is real, but to reject his conclusion. We must recognize that the wound is not a mistake to be fixed by another human, but an opening through which the light of higher understanding can enter. The navel is not just a scar of punishment, it is a mark of our origin. We must also consider the historical irony of who is speaking. Aristophanes was a conservative thinker who often mocked the new intellectual movements of Athens, including Socrates. By putting this speech in his mouth, Plato is acknowledging the popular, sentimental view of love, the view that says, "I just want to find my person and settle down." It is a view that seeks a return to the past, to a lost golden age of wholeness. But life and philosophy moves forward, not backward. We cannot be glued back into spheres. We must learn to walk on two legs. As we analyze this stage of our development, we see the ancient ache for what it is: the initial engine. It is the fuel that gets us out of bed and into the world. It forces us to engage with others because the pain of isolation is too great to bear. But we must be careful not to mistake the engine for the destination. The desire to merge is where love starts, but if it stays there, it becomes stagnant. So, the next time you feel that deep, hollow pang of loneliness, or that electric shock of meeting someone who feels like they complete you, remember the round humans. Acknowledge the ancient memory of the cut. But then, remind yourself, I am not looking for someone to patch me up. I am looking for a partner to walk with. The difference is subtle, but it is the difference between a love that creates a crutch and a love that grows wings. We are not trying to become spheres again. We are trying to become something entirely new. Section 3. Desire as a map to missing pieces. The applause for Aristophanes eventually dies down, and the spotlight shifts to the host of the evening, Agathon. If Aristophanes was the voice of comedy and raw human instinct, Agathon is the voice of high culture and refined aesthetics. He delivers a speech that is dazzling, poetic, and incredibly flattering to the god of love. He describes Eros as the happiest, most beautiful, and best of all the gods, delicate, young, soft-footed, and full of virtue. He paints a portrait of love that looks suspiciously like himself A young, celebrated, and successful artist, the guests are mesmerized. The sheer beauty of his words acts like a spell. Historical fact: Agathon's style of speaking was heavily influenced by the sophist Gorgias, known for his hypnotic use of rhyme, rhythm, and parallelism. This style was so potent that Socrates, upon hearing it, jokingly remarks that he was almost turned to stone, comparing Agathon's eloquence to the head of the Gorgon Medusa. This is a crucial historical nuance in Athens. Rhetoric was often viewed as a kind of magic or drug that could bypass reason to manipulate the soul. The guests are high on the beauty of the language, nodding in agreement that love is indeed everything Agathon says. It is perfect, complete, and divine. But then, Socrates speaks, and as he always does, he acts as a sobering agent. He refuses to offer a competitive speech. Instead, he asks permission to ask Agathon just a few little questions. This is the moment the party shifts from a performance to an investigation. Socrates begins his famous dismantling process, known as the elenchus. He gently guides Agathon into a logical trap that reveals the fundamental nature of desire, a truth that contradicts the pretty picture Agathon just painted. Socrates asks, "Is love the love of something or of nothing?" Agathon replies that it is certainly the love of something. Socrates continues, "And does love desire that which he loves?" "Certainly." "And does he desire what he already has, or what he does not have?" Agathon hesitates, then admits the likely truth: what he does not have. Socrates pounces on this admission. It is the pivot point of the entire dialogue. He argues that one does not desire what one already possesses. A tall man does not wish to be tall. He already is. A fast runner does not wish to be fast. If a healthy man says, "I wish to be healthy," what he really means is, "I wish to continue being healthy in the future," which implies he wants to secure something against the threat of losing it. Therefore, desire is inextricably linked to lack. If love is the desire for beauty, as Agathon claims, then love must lack beauty. If love is the desire for the good, then love must lack goodness. In a few swift moves, Socrates strips the god Eros of his divinity. Love is not beautiful. He is the hunger for beauty. Love is not a god. He is a seeker of the god. This logical dissection might seem dry or even cruel to the romantic mind, but it contains a psychological key that unlocks the mystery of our own attractions. We can call this the map of missing pieces. Think about the people you have fallen in love with or felt an intense attraction to throughout your life. We often believe we choose them because they are objectively the best, or because of some mystical alignment of the stars. But the Socratic framework suggests a more functional reason we fall in love with people who possess the qualities we feel we are missing in ourselves. Rare detail. There is a subtle moment in the text where Socrates acknowledges that before Diotima taught him, he used to think exactly like Agathon. He admits to his own past ignorance, stating he once believed love was the beloved, the beautiful object, rather than the lover, the active force of need. This confession is rare for Socrates, who usually frames himself as merely knowing that he knows nothing. Here, he admits to a specific previous misconception, showing that even the greatest philosopher had to learn to separate the feeling of love from the object of love. Apply this to the modern dating landscape. Consider the cautious, overly analytical accountant who falls madly in love with a spontaneous, chaotic artist. Why? because the accountant's soul is starving for spontaneity. The attraction is not just to the person, it is to the freedom that person embodies, a freedom the accountant denies himself. Conversely, the chaotic artist might be drawn to the steady, boring accountant because she subconsciously craves the structure and grounding she lacks. We treat these attractions as destiny, but they are actually diagnostics. Your crush is a mirror reflecting your own void. If you are obsessed with someone who is incredibly confident and brash, it is likely because you are suppressing your own voice. If you are drawn to someone nurturing and domestic, it may be because you have neglected your own need for self-care and home. This realization is liberating, but also humbling. It means that the magical feeling of resonance with another person is actually the sound of your own emptiness echoing back to you. However, unlike Aristophanes' myth, which suggests we are permanently broken halves waiting for a savior, the Socratic view offers a path to growth. If desire is a map to what we lack, then every crush is a lesson plan. When you feel that pang of longing, instead of immediately trying to possess the person, stop and ask, what quality do they have that I am hungry for? If you identify that you love them for their social grace, it is a signal that you need to develop your own social skills. If you love them for their intellectual depth, it is a sign you need to read more and cultivate your own mind. The person you admire is a prototype of who you could become. This shifts the dynamic of love from consumption to inspiration. In the consumption model, the temptation, you try to eat the other person to consume their time, their energy, and their qualities to fill your hole. You want to own the confident person so you can feel confident by association. But this never works. You remain empty, and they eventually feel drained. In the inspiration model, the transformation, you use the attraction as fuel to build that quality within yourself. You see their beauty not as a treasure to be stolen, but as a standard to aspire to. You let your lack drive you to work, not just to want. Socrates' deconstruction of Agathon serves as a necessary disillusionment. We must stop worshiping the image of love as a perfect, soft, happy ending. We must embrace love as a barefoot, dusty, resourceful hunter, always poor, always in need, but always scheming to attain the good. When we accept that desire is lack, we stop being ashamed of our loneliness. We realize that the emptiness we feel is not a sign of failure. It is the necessary space required for something new to enter. You cannot fill a cup that is already full. The lack is the capacity for growth. Agathon, to his credit, accepts Socrates' correction with grace. He says, "I didn't understand a word of what I was saying." It is a moment of beautiful humility. In our own lives, we must be willing to admit that perhaps we haven't understood what our hearts were saying either. We thought we wanted the person. In reality, we wanted the virtue they carried. By the end of this exchange, the room is cleared of the perfume of Agathon's rhetoric. The air is sharper, cleaner. The guests are no longer looking at a golden statue of a god. They are looking at the mechanics of their own souls. They are ready to hear the true lineage of love, not as a prince of the gods, but as the child of two very different parents, poverty and plenty, which explains why we can feel so miserable and so invincible at the exact same time. Section 4. The dual nature of the spirit Eros. Having dismantled the pretty illusions of Agathon, Socrates now steps aside. he claims he cannot speak of love on his own authority. Instead, he recounts a conversation he once had with a wise woman from Mantinea named Diotima. This is a significant narrative shift. Historical fact. In ancient Athens, women were largely excluded from philosophical discourse and public banquets, symposia, by attributing the highest wisdom of the dialogue to a woman. Plato is making a subtle but radical statement that the mysteries of birth, creation, and love are domains where the feminine intellect holds authority. Diotima is not just a teacher, she is a priestess who understands the rituals of purification required to see the truth. Diotima offers Socrates and us a new myth to explain the erratic, confusing nature of love. She tells the story of the birth of Eros. It happened on the birthday of Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. The gods were holding a great feast. Among them was Poros plenty or resourcefulness, the son of Metis wisdom. He drank too much nectar, for wine had not yet been invented, and, feeling heavy and drowsy, he went out into the garden of Zeus and fell asleep. Meanwhile, Penny Poverty came to the door to beg for scraps, as one does when there is a feast. She saw Poros sleeping in the garden. Being destitute and without resources of her own, she devised a plan she would have a child by Poros to improve her circumstances. She lay down beside him, and in that stolen moment, love, Eros, was conceived. This parentage explains everything about why love feels the way it does. Because he is the son of poverty. Love is not delicate and beautiful as Agathon claimed. He is rough and squalid, walking barefoot, with no house to sleep in. He sleeps in doorways and on the streets, under the open sky. He is always living with need. He is the gnawing hunger that keeps you awake at night, the anxiety of not having enough, the desperation of the crush. This is the part of love that makes us feel pathetic, weak, and exposed. But because he is also the son of plenty, love is a schemer. He is bold, enterprising, and strong. He is a mighty hunter, always weaving some stratagem. He is desirous of wisdom and is full of resources. When you are in love, suddenly you become incredibly creative. You find ways to bump into your crush accidentally. You write poetry you didn't know you had in you. You drive 5 hours just to see someone for 5 minutes. You have energy you can't explain. That is the DNA of Poros kicking in. Rare detail. Diotima emphasizes that Eros is also a sorcerer, a magician, and a sophist. This characterization paints love not just as a feeling, but as a trickster. He casts spells on us. He alters our perception of reality, making the beloved seem perfect and the rest of the world seem dull. This magic is necessary because without it, we would never undertake the difficult work of connection. We need the illusion to start the journey. This dual nature, half God, half beggar, is why love is never stable. We often complain that relationships are hard work, that the spark fades, or that we swing between confidence and insecurity. We think something is wrong. Diotima tells us, no, this is the design. Love is supposed to be in flux. He is never either without resources or wealthy, Diotima says. But whatever he gains flows away from him, so that love is never completely rich, nor completely poor. Think of the emotional roller coaster of a new romance. One day, you receive a text message, and you feel like the king of the world plenty. You are high on dopamine, convinced this is the one. The next day, they leave you on read for 3 hours. and you crash into absolute despair. Poverty. You feel worthless and abandoned. This oscillation is not a symptom of mental illness. It is the heartbeat of Eros. Understanding this duality is a massive relief for the modern soul. We live in a culture that seeks closure and stability above all else. We want love to be a comfortable sofa. But Eros is a hiker on a trail. If you are feeling a mix of resourcefulness and desperation, you are doing it right. You are embodying the spirit. This perspective also changes how we view our partners. When we see them struggling, sometimes needy poverty, sometimes brilliant plenty, we can recognize the same spirit in them. We stop demanding that they be static gods of perfection. We accept that, like us, they are caught in the in-between, the metaxy. The concept of the metaxy is central here. Eros is a messenger who shuttles back and forth between the mortal and the divine. He translates our prayers to the gods and brings the gods' commands to us. In our relationships, this means love is the translator between our animal instincts and our highest ideals. It is the friction point. If you try to eliminate the poverty aspect, the neediness, the longing, you kill the love. You become indifferent. If you try to eliminate the plenty aspect, the pursuit, the scheming, you also kill the love. You become a passive victim. You must hold both. You must be willing to stand in the doorway like Penia, admitting your need, while simultaneously acting with the boldness of Poros to secure what is good. This section asks us to embrace the messiness of our condition. It tells us that the anxiety of love is not a sign that we are broken. It is a sign that we are alive and reaching for something beyond our grasp. The in-between is an uncomfortable place to live, but it is the only place where growth happens. So, when you lie in bed at night, tossing and turning because of a heartache or a hope, remember the Garden of Zeus. Remember that you are the child of a beggar and a god. You are supposed to be hungry, but you are also supposed to be resourceful. Do not let the poverty paralyze you. Let the plenty inspire you. Use the hunger to hunt for the good. The myth of Poros and Penia teaches us that love is not a state of being. It is a state of becoming. It is a process of constant acquisition and loss. And in that constant motion, the soul is stretched, exercised, and made stronger. We are not meant to be full like the gods, nor empty like the beasts. We are meant to be the bridge. Section 5. Creating legacy. Instead of just children. We have established that love is a desire for the good, but Diotima now adds a crucial temporal dimension to this definition. It is not enough to simply have the good for a moment. If you possessed a perfect health or a perfect love for one day, only to lose it the next, would you be satisfied? Of course not. Therefore, Diotima amends the definition. Love is the desire to possess the good forever. But here, we run into the tragic wall of human existence. We are not forever. We are mortal. We are temporary vessels that age, break, and eventually disappear. So, how can a mortal creature satisfy the desire for immortality? Diotima's answer is startlingly biological, yet deeply metaphysical: generation, reproduction. This is the one deathless and eternal element in our mortality. We typically think of sex and romance as sources of pleasure or intimacy. But the Platonic view zooms out to see the species-level objective. The intense drive of Eros, that overwhelming compulsion to merge with another, is actually a subconscious attempt to defeat death. By creating a child, we leave a piece of ourselves behind. The child carries our features, our blood, and our name into a future we will never see. It is our bid for eternity. Rare detail. To prove her point, Diotima asks Socrates to look at the animal kingdom. She describes how even the weakest animals are seized by a terrible disease of love when they want to procreate. They become manic. They are willing to starve themselves to feed their young. They are willing to fight creatures much stronger than themselves to protect their offspring. Why would a rational instinct for self-preservation be overridden so violently? Diotima argues that the instinct for immortality is stronger than the instinct for survival. The individual is willing to die so that the line may live. This leads to one of the most fascinating psychological insights in the Symposium. Diotima argues that our identity is not a fixed statue, but a flowing river. She points out that even within a single lifetime, we are never the same person. Rare detail. She explains that our hair, flesh, bones, and blood are constantly dying and being renewed. But it is not just the body, it is the soul too. Our habits, opinions, desires, pleasures, pains, and fears are never the same. They are always in a state of flux, some dying out, others being born. Even our knowledge is not static. We forget things and have to relearn them. Studying, she says, is simply the act of renewing a memory that is trying to die. If we are constantly perishing and being renewed moment by moment, then creation is the only thing holding us together. We are only us because we keep regenerating us. Now, we apply this to the concept of love. If the goal of love is immortality, then biological reproduction is only the lowest rung of the ladder. It is the default setting. It is how those who are pregnant in body achieve their immortality. They turn to women, they raise families, and they secure their memory through grandchildren. But, and here is the great pivot, there are those who are pregnant in soul. There are people whose souls are more fertile than their bodies. What do these people conceive and bear? They bear wisdom and virtue. They bear art, poetry, inventions, and laws. These are their children, and these children are far more beautiful and longer lasting than human offspring. Historical fact. Diotima points to the great poets like Homer and Hesiod, and the lawgivers like Solon and Lycurgus. She asks, who would not prefer to have their children rather than ordinary human ones? She notes that the shrines and temples in Greece are built to honor these men because of their immortal children, their poems and laws, whereas no temple has ever been built to honor a man just for having a biological son. The Iliad has survived for nearly 3,000 years. The biological descendants of Homer, if he had any, are long forgotten, dissolved into the dust of history. But his mind-child still lives, still speaks, and still transforms the world. This reframing is incredibly powerful for the modern individual. We often feel a pressure, sometimes biological, sometimes societal, to settle down and start a family. We are told that this is the only path to maturity and legacy. But Plato offers an alternative path that is equally valid and arguably more potent. When you feel that surge of creative energy, the desire to write a book, to build a business, to compose a song, to launch a charity that is eros, it is the exact same energy that drives sexual attraction, but it has been sublimated into a higher form. You are trying to birth something into the world that will outlast you. You are trying to touch eternity. This explains why artists often describe their works as their babies. It explains the post-project depression that comes after finishing a major work. It is a form of postpartum melancholy. It explains the fierce protectiveness creators feel over their ideas. They are not just protecting a product, they are protecting their bid for immortality. For those who choose not to have children or cannot have them. This section is a profound validation. It confirms that your life is not a dead end. You are not barren. On the contrary, if you are pregnant in soul, you have the potential to birth things that can care for humanity for centuries. But even for those who do have children, the lesson holds. Do not rely solely on your biology to do the work of your legacy. Your children will have their own lives. They are not your monuments. You must also cultivate the garden of your own mind. You must ask yourself, what am I birthing into the world besides my DNA? This perspective transforms how we view our romantic partners. We stop looking for a breeding partner, someone just to manage a household with, and start looking for a co-creator. We look for someone who helps us birth our best ideas. We look for a muse not in the passive sense of a pretty face to look at, but in the active sense of a catalyst that sparks our spiritual fertility. The temptation here is to get stuck in the biological loop, to think that sex and procreation are the only outlets for this powerful drive. The transformation is to recognize that your creative drive is a holy instinct. When you are working late on a project that you care about deeply, and you feel that strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration, know that you are in the grip of Eros. You are participating in the ancient, divine struggle to overcome death. You are weaving a raft to float your essence down the river of time. So, the next time you feel the ache of love, ask yourself, is this energy asking for a baby? Or is it asking for a poem? Is it asking for a night of pleasure? Or is it asking for a lifetime of work? Sometimes it is both. But often, the soul is crying out for a child of the mind, and we mistake it for a cry of the body. By recognizing the pregnancy of the soul, we liberate ourselves from the tyranny of biology. We become architects of our own eternity. We realize that while our bodies must eventually return to the earth, the beauty we create can remain, walking the earth on its own 2 feet, long after we are gone. Section 6. The trap of fixating on one person. We now stand at the foot of the famous ladder of love. Diotima begins her instruction on how to ascend, and naturally, the ascent begins on the ground floor, the attraction to a single, beautiful body. This is where almost every human love story starts. You see someone a stranger across a room, a friend seen in a new light, and suddenly, the world narrows down to the shape of their face and the sound of their voice. Diotima acknowledges this phase is necessary. She tells Socrates that the young lover must first love one beautiful body. It is the ignition switch. Without this initial, singular attraction, the engine of Eros would never start. However, she implicitly warns that while this step is a necessary beginning, it is a terrible place to stop. The danger lies in what modern psychologists call fixation, but what the Greeks understood as a form of tyranny over the soul. When we fixate on one person, we make a logical error with devastating emotional consequences. We convince ourselves that beauty is a property that belongs exclusively to this specific individual. We believe that if we lose them, we lose access to beauty itself. This belief creates a dynamic of slavery. The lover becomes a hostage to the beloved's whims. If the beloved smiles, the sun rises. If they frown, the world goes dark. This is not a partnership. It is a dictatorship of one. Historical fact. The Symposium offers us a living, breathing example of this tragic fixation in the figure of Alcibiades. Later in the dialogue, the doors of Agathon's house are flung open, and Alcibiades stumbles in, drunk, supported by a flute-girl, and crowned with a thick wreath of ivy and violets. Alcibiades was the golden boy of Athens, incredibly handsome, wealthy, a brilliant general, and a charismatic politician. He had the world at his feet, yet he confesses to the group that he is completely enslaved by his love for Socrates. He describes his obsession as a snake bite in the heart. He admits that he runs away from Socrates like a runaway slave, hiding from his master, yet he cannot stay away. Here is the most powerful man in Athens, reduced to a trembling wreck because he has fixated his entire sense of worth and beauty onto one man who refuses to be possessed. Alcibiades represents the trap. He thinks that if he can just physically seduce Socrates, if he can just wrap his arms around that specific body, he will absorb Socrates' wisdom and virtue. He is trying to consume the person rather than ascend toward the principle. Because he cannot climb the ladder, he remains stuck on the bottom rung, tormented by a beauty he can touch but never truly own. This torment was so recognized in ancient Greek culture that it spawned a specific genre of poetry and behavior called the rare detail paraklosothyron lament beside the closed door. It was a common custom for a lover, after being rejected or locked out, to sleep on the cold doorstep of the beloved's house, weeping and drinking wine, sometimes leaving wreaths or writing verses on the doorframe. While the poets romanticized this as devotion, Plato views it with a clinical detachment. To sleep on the doorstep is to debase oneself. It is to declare, "I am nothing without you." It is the ultimate triumph of poverty, need over plenty, resourcefulness. In our modern lives, the paraklosothyron has gone digital. We may not sleep on doorsteps, but we camp out on their social media profiles. We analyze their last active status. We reread old text messages like they are sacred scriptures. We construct shrines in our minds. We convince ourselves that this one person is the soulmate, the only one in a planet of 8 billion people who holds the key to our happiness. This scarcity mindset is the root of all romantic anxiety. If there is only one source of water in the desert, you will guard it with your life. You will be jealous, paranoid, and violent if anyone else approaches it. You will live in constant fear of the well running dry. Plato challenges us to ask, is the beauty truly in the person? Or is the person a vessel for the beauty? Think of it like sunlight hitting a stained glass window. The window glows with magnificent colors. It is mesmerizing. The fixated lover falls in love with the window. He thinks the window is the source of the light. He clings to the glass. But if the sun sets, the window becomes dark and lifeless. The wise lover realizes that the beauty was the light passing through the glass, and that same light shines through millions of other windows. Diotima urges the lover to realize that the beauty of one form is akin to the beauty of another. This seems like a simple observation, but it is a radical psychological shift. It breaks the spell of the one. When you are suffering from heartbreak or obsession, it is usually because you have confused the vessel with the contents. You think you miss him or her. In reality, you miss the wit, the warmth, the vitality, and the intelligence that shone through them. And because you think those qualities are unique to them, you feel destitute. The trap of fixating on one person is essentially a case of mistaken identity. We mistake the messenger for the message. We mistake the particular for the universal. To escape this trap, we do not need to love the person less. We need to understand what we love more clearly. We must realize that the intense gravitational pull we feel is not meant to orbit a single human star forever. It is a gravity assist, a slingshot maneuver designed to propel us further out into the universe of connection. Alcibiades failed to learn this. He stayed obsessed with the specific man, Socrates, and it drove him to madness and eventually to a chaotic life that contributed to the downfall of Athens. He is the shadow warning of the Symposium. He shows us that talent, beauty, and passion are not enough if they are directed at the wrong target. As we end this section, look at your own obsessions. Look at the person who takes up too much real estate in your mind. Acknowledge their beauty. Acknowledge your desire. But then, try to loosen your grip. Remind yourself, this person is a beautiful example, but they are not the definition. By loosening the grip on the one, we prepare our hands to receive the many. We prepare to step off the cold doorstep of the paraklausothyron and walk back into the wide, open world where beauty is waiting to be found everywhere. Section 7. Finding Freedom in Universal Beauty. We have just witnessed the trap of Alcibiades, the suffocating, desperate attachment to a single person. It is a state of high anxiety, where the lover guards their beloved like a dragon guarding a solitary jewel. But now, Diotima invites us to take the next step up the ladder, a step that offers the first real taste of emotional freedom. She instructs the aspiring philosopher to realize that the beauty in any one body is brother to the beauty in any other. This realization sounds simple, but it requires a profound shift in perception. It asks us to move from being a collector of the unique to being a connoisseur of the universal. Imagine you are a lover of music, but you claim to only love one specific song played on one specific violin. If you hear the same melody played on a cello or a piano or hummed by a stranger and you feel nothing, do you really love the music, or do you just love the habit of that one violin? Diotima argues that if you truly love the quality of beauty, you must recognize it wherever it appears. And since beauty is not rare, since it appears in countless forms, it is great folly not to acknowledge that it is one and the same everywhere. This step is often misunderstood in modern terms. We might interpret this as a license for promiscuity, a philosophical excuse to become a player or a Casanova, jumping from bed to bed. But the Platonic intention is almost the opposite. It is not about consuming more bodies. It is about needing the specific one less. It is about detachment, not indulgence. Historical fact. We can see this shift reflected in the art history of Athens itself. In the Archaic period, prior to the classical age of Plato, Greek sculptors created statues known as kouroi. These were free-standing figures of nude youths. What is remarkable about them is their generic perfection. They did not depict specific individuals with quirks or flaws. They depicted the idea of youth and strength. When an Athenian walked through the city or the cemetery, they saw these figures not as Cleobis or beaten, but as manifestations of the beautiful itself. The culture trained the eye to appreciate the form rather than the personal idiosyncrasy. By internalizing this view, the lover undergoes a radical cooling of the passions. Diotima explicitly tells us that upon realizing this truth, the lover must abate his violent love of the one. Rare detail. The Greek verb used here suggests a physical slackening or relaxing, similar to loosening a taut rope or a bowstring. This implies that the obsession with one person is a state of high tension, a cramp in the soul. The movement to the universal is the massage that releases the cramp. The text says, the lover will come to deem the exclusive attachment small or petty smikron. They essentially look back at their former obsession and think, why was I so worked up over just one instance when the world is full of this glory? This is the cure for jealousy. Jealousy thrives on scarcity. It whispers, if I lose her, I lose beauty. If I lose him, I lose happiness. But the moment you realize that the beauty you admire is a shared property like sunlight or oxygen, the panic subsides. You realize that your partner is a wonderful participant in beauty, but they do not hold the monopoly on it. This stage of the ascent teaches us the museum mindset. When you walk through a museum full of magnificent paintings, you can stand before a Monet or a Van Gogh and be moved to tears by its beauty. You can love it deeply, but you do not feel the need to grab it off the wall, stuff it in your bag, and hide it in your basement so no one else can see it. You are content to let it be, to appreciate it in the moment, and then move to the next room to find beauty there. 2. You understand that the beauty belongs to the world, not to you. Applying this to modern relationships can be incredibly healing. It allows us to appreciate others without threatening our primary commitments. You can notice the charm of a stranger, the wit of a colleague, or the elegance of a friend, and feel a surge of appreciation, eros, without it needing to lead to a crisis or an affair. You acknowledge, there is beauty again, and you let it pass. You are no longer a starving hunter who must eat everything he sees. You are a wealthy observer. This expansion of the heart makes us better partners. When we stop demanding that our partner be the source of all beauty, we relieve them of a crushing burden. We can love them for who they are, rather than for the role we need them to play. We can say, I choose you, not I am addicted to you. However, this freedom comes with a price. It requires the death of the specialness of the romance narrative. We love to believe that our beloved is unique in all the universe. Plato tells us gently, no, they are a beautiful echo of a song that the universe is singing everywhere. This might feel less romantic to the sentimental heart, but it is far more sustainable for the rational soul. It replaces the frantic, shaky heat of obsession with the steady, warm glow of appreciation. As we conclude this section, imagine the knot in your chest, the tightness that comes from holding on too hard to one person or one outcome. Visualize that knot loosening. Imagine the rope going slack. The person you desire is just one wave in a vast ocean. The wave will crash and recede, but the water, the essence of what you love, remains. By loving the water instead of the wave, you become free. You have stepped off the narrow ledge of the individual and entered the wide, open meadow of the universal. Section 8. When character outshines the body. We have reached a critical pivot point in our ascent. The lover has looked upon the vast sea of physical beauty and realized that a beautiful shape is not a rare commodity. It is common. It is everywhere. And as with any currency, when the supply is high, the value drops. The lover, now bored by the mere repetition of beautiful faces, begins to search for something scarcer, something that cannot be found on just any street corner. They turn their gaze inward. They begin to fall in love with the soul. Diotima describes this transition with precision. She states that the lover must now consider the beauty of souls more precious than that of the body. This is not a sentimental platitude about inner beauty being what counts. It is a sophisticated evolution of taste. Just as a wine connoisseur eventually tires of sweet, cheap table wine and begins to crave the complex, difficult notes of a vintage red, the ascending lover stops being satisfied by the sugar rush of physical attraction. They begin to crave the complexity of character. Historical fact. There is no better historical embodiment of this paradox than Socrates himself. By all accounts of ancient Athens, Socrates was physically repulsive. He had a snub nose, bulging frog-like eyes, thick lips, and a protruding belly. In a culture that worshipped physical perfection, where gymnasiums were the center of social life, Socrates was an aesthetic disaster. Yet, the most beautiful youths of Athens, including Alcibiades and Agathon, were desperately in love with him. They competed for his attention. They were not blind. They had simply ascended the ladder. They saw something in his mind that made his physical shell irrelevant. This stage brings a profound liberation from the tyranny of appearances. Diotima explains that at this level, even if a person has little of the bloom of youth, physical beauty, if their soul is decent or noble, the lover is content to love and care for them. This creates a new kind of intimacy. The connection is no longer based on gazing at each other, but on gazing together at ideas. The conversation shifts from flirtation to exploration. The lover seeks to give birth to such thoughts as will make young men better. Here we see the return of the reproductive drive mentioned earlier, but now it is fully sublimated. The sex of this stage is conversation. The foreplay is debate. The climax is a shared realization of truth. Rare detail. In the dialogue, Alcibiades uses a specific, vivid metaphor to describe this experience. He compares Socrates to a statue of Silenus. In Athenian marketplaces, craftsmen sold these small, ugly figurines of the satyr Silenus, who was a follower of Dionysus. But these statues were hollow and hinged. If you opened them up, inside were hidden tiny golden statues of the gods. Alcibiades confesses that when he peeled back Socrates' rough arguments and confusing questions, he saw divine and golden images of such beauty that he had no choice but to obey them. This Silenus effect is the hallmark of the 8th step. We stop judging the book by its cover, not because we are trying to be nice, but because we know the treasure is often hidden in plain, unadorned boxes. In the modern dating world, this is the shift from swiping to listening. We live in a visual-first culture. Dating apps prioritize the photo. We are trained to make split-second decisions based on the geometry of a jawline or the symmetry of a smile. But anyone who has spent time on these platforms knows the inevitable fatigue that sets in. You meet the perfect physical specimen, only to find that talking to them is like talking to a wall. The attraction evaporates instantly. Conversely, you might meet someone who didn't catch your eye initially, but 10 minutes into the conversation, their humor, their kindness, or their intellect lights up the room. Suddenly, they become the most attractive person in the venue. That sudden lighting up is the Silenus statue opening. When you reach this stage, Your type disappears. You are no longer looking for a specific hair color or height. You are looking for a specific vibration of the soul. You are looking for integrity, resilience, wit, and gentleness. This shift also changes the power dynamic of love. Physical beauty is a depreciating asset. It fades with every passing year. If you love someone for their body, your love is on a ticking clock. But the beauty of the soul wisdom, experience, kindness is an appreciating asset. It often grows richer with age. Therefore, the love formed at this level is more stable. It is future-proof. However, we must be careful. This is not about ignoring the body or pretending we are purely rational beings. We are still humans. But the hierarchy has flipped. The body is now the frame, not the painting. We appreciate a nice frame, but we don't buy the art for it. The temptation at this stage is to slide back down the ladder, to let a flash of physical beauty override our knowledge of a person's poor character. We've all done it. We excuse bad behavior because the person is hot. We ignore the red flags of narcissism or cruelty because the packaging is exquisite. The transformation is to train our erotic instinct to be disgusted by a bad soul, no matter how pretty the face is. It is to reach a point where unkindness is a turn-off, more potent than bad breath. As you navigate your relationships, look for the golden images inside the people around you. Ask yourself, if this person lost their looks tomorrow in an accident, would I still want to sit at this table and talk to them? If the answer is yes, you have found a beauty that is real. You have opened the Salinas statue. You are no longer just a lover of bodies. You are becoming a lover of the invisible. Section 9. Relationships as a school for virtue. We have ascended from the appreciation of the body to the appreciation of the soul. But what does one do with a beautiful soul once it is found? In the modern romantic script, the goal is usually possession and comfort. We find a good person, we marry them, and we settle into a life of mutual reassurance. We want a partner who tells us we are perfect just the way we are. Plato, however, proposes a radically different purpose for relationships. He views the connection between two people not as a sofa for relaxation, but as a workshop for construction. The goal is not happiness in the modern sense of feeling good. The goal is arete virtue, or excellence. This brings us to the 9th rung of the ladder, the realization that a relationship is a school. In the Symposium, Diotima explicitly states that when a person is pregnant in soul and meets a beautiful and noble mind, they immediately begin to teem with ideas. They want to speak about what makes a good man and how he should live. Through this interaction, this friction of two souls rubbing against each other, virtue is born. The relationship becomes a mechanism for moral improvement. Historical fact. To understand this, we must look at the specific social structure of ancient Athens, the institution of pederastia. While this practice is controversial and alien to modern sensibilities, in its idealized philosophical form, as argued by Pausanias in the Dialogue, it was intended to be a mentorship. The older man Erastes was expected to guide the younger man Eromenos, not just in the ways of the world, but in the ways of citizenship, courage, and honor. It was, in theory, a transfer of wisdom. A lover who only sought physical pleasure was considered vulgar and shameful. A lover who sought to improve the character of his beloved was considered heavenly. The test of a true relationship was, did the beloved become a better person because of this love? This historical context provides a blueprint for what we might call the pedagogical relationship. In this model, love is active. It challenges. It demands. Think about the difference between a fan and a coach. A fan cheers for you no matter what. They ignore your flaws because they just want you to like them. A coach, however, points out your bad form. A coach pushes you to run the extra mile when you are tired. A coach sees the potential in you that you cannot yet see in yourself and refuses to let you settle for less. Plato suggests that a true lover is a coach. Rare detail. There is a subtle, often overlooked dynamic in the Socratic dialogues known as protreptic, the art of turning a soul toward the good. Socrates often engaged in what looked like flirting, but his ultimate aim was to shame his interlocutors into being better. In the Symposium, Alcibiades confesses that Socrates is the only person in the world who has ever made him feel shame. I know that I cannot answer him or say that I ought not to do as he bids. Alcibiades admits, I am ashamed of my own neglect of myself. This shame is not a toxic, paralyzing guilt. It is the stinging antiseptic of growth. It is the realization that one is capable of more. In our modern lives, we often avoid partners who challenge us. We call them difficult or demanding. We prefer partners who enable our bad habits or validate our excuses because it feels safer. But the Platonic view warns us that a love without challenge is a love without growth. If your partner never questions your assumptions, never pushes you to pursue your ambitions, and never calls you out on your selfishness, they are loving your comfort, not your soul. This shifts the metric of a successful relationship. We usually ask, do we never fight? Do we have the same hobbies? Do we have fun? The Platonic questions are sharper. Am I more courageous because of this person? Am I more disciplined? Do I think more clearly? Are we, together, generating children of wisdom and justice? This is the procreation Diotima spoke of earlier, but now it is fully realized. The couple is not just making babies, they are making each other. They are sculpting the raw marble of their personalities into something finer. Of course, there is a danger here. The temptation is to become a nag or a tyrant to try to fix your partner because you are dissatisfied with them. That is not love. That is control. The transformation occurs when the improvement is mutual and born of admiration. You do not push your partner because they are not good enough. You push them because you see their divine potential, and you cannot bear to see it wasted. This dynamic requires a tremendous amount of humility. To be in a school for virtue, you must admit that you still have a lot to learn. You must be willing to let your partner be your mirror, even when the reflection is unflattering. Imagine a relationship where, instead of date nights spent just consuming entertainment, you spent time discussing your values. Imagine asking your partner, where do you think I was weak today? How can I handle that situation better next time? It sounds unromantic to the modern ear, but to the Platonist, this is the height of intimacy. It is two souls stripping naked not in body, but in character, and helping each other wash off the dust of the world. When we view the relationship as a school, the conflicts and friction are no longer signs of failure. They are the heat of the kiln. They are necessary for the firing of the clay. As we close this section, look at the person you love or the person you hope to love. Do not just ask, do they make me happy? Ask, do they make me good? And equally important, ask yourself, what am I teaching them? Am I feeding their vanity, or am I feeding their virtue? True love does not just gaze at beauty, it creates it. And the most beautiful thing you can create is a better human being. Section 10. The lover as a gentle guide. We have established that the relationship is a school for virtue. But if the relationship is a school, then the lover must take on the role of a teacher, or more accurately, a guide. This brings us to the 10th stage of our journey, the transformation of passion into stewardship. At this level, the lover realizes that the soul of the beloved is a garden entrusted to their care. The goal is no longer to harvest the fruit for one's own hunger, but to ensure the tree grows tall and straight. This is a dangerous stage. It is very easy for guidance to slip into control. We have all seen the partner who treats their significant other like a project to be fixed, critiquing their clothes, their career choices, and their habits under the guise of helping them improve. This is not love. This is arrogance. To understand the difference between a tyrant and a true guide, we must look to the specific imagery Plato uses in his other great dialogue on love, the Phaedrus. While the Symposium describes the ascent, the Phaedrus explains the psychology of the connection. Rare detail. Plato offers a fascinating psychological categorization here. He suggests that the way we love depends on which god our soul followed in the time before birth. He claims that a soul who followed Zeus, the god of wisdom and leadership, will seek a partner who has the potential for wisdom. When they find such a person, they do everything in their power to nurture that wisdom. However, a soul who followed Ares, the god of war, will be more possessive, jealous, and combative in their love. They might interpret conflict as connection. This means our love style is not random. It is a reflection of our deepest values. The Zeus-style lover acts like a sculptor. They see the faint outline of a god inside the beloved and gently chip away the marble to reveal it. This metaphor of the sculptor is crucial. A bad sculptor smashes the stone, trying to force it into a shape it does not want to take. A master sculptor studies the grain of the stone, respects its nature, and works with it. In the context of the accessible path, this means the lover's job is to identify the god within their partner, their highest potential, and serve that. Historical fact. This concept was institutionalized in the Athenian education system known as paideia. In ancient Athens, there were no public schools in the modern sense. Education was often a private affair, and for young men, it was deeply mentorship-based. The older generation was expected to transmit the culture to the younger generation, not just through lectures, but through close, personal association. The word pedagogue-teacher originally referred to the slave who walked the boy to school, protecting and guiding him. In the highest form of love, the lover becomes a voluntary pedagogue, a protector of the beloved's journey through the world. However, the gentle guide does not just lecture, they guide by being. Socrates was the ultimate example of this. He rarely gave direct advice. He didn't tell people what to think. Instead, he asked questions. He played the role of the midwife mutix, helping others give birth to the truths that were already inside them. Applying this to modern relationships requires a shift from telling to asking. Instead of saying, "You should really apply for that job," the gentle guide asks, "What is stopping you from applying? What are you afraid of?" Instead of saying, You are too emotional. The gentle guide asks, what is this feeling trying to tell us? By asking questions, you respect the autonomy of your partner. You are watering the plant, not pulling on the leaves to make it grow faster. There is a profound humility in this stance. It acknowledges that you do not own the other person. You are merely a witness and an assistant to their unfolding. When you view yourself as a guide, you also become more patient. You realize that growth is slow. You don't get angry at a flower for not blooming in winter. The temptation at this stage is the Pygmalion complex, falling in love with your potential version of the person rather than who they actually are. This leads to disappointment when they don't change fast enough. The transformation is to love the process of their growth. It is to find joy in the small victories, the moment they stand up for themselves, the moment they conquer a fear, the moment they articulate a new idea, when you take pride in their expansion, even if it means they might eventually outgrow you. You have achieved a selfless form of eros. This is the most generous thing one human being can do for another, to hold the lantern while the other finds their path. Section 11. Falling in love with shared values. We have ascended past the body and past the individual soul. Now, Diotima points the lover toward a vista that often confuses the modern mind. She tells us that the next object of love is the beauty of laws and institutions. At first glance, this sounds incredibly unromantic. How can one fall in love with a law or an institution? We tend to view laws as restrictive, bureaucratic, and cold, the very opposite of passion. But in the Platonic worldview, laws, nomoi, are not just traffic rules or tax codes. They are the structural rhythms of a good life. They are the habits, customs, and shared agreements that allow virtue to flourish. To understand this, we must look at the third entity in a relationship. When two people come together, they create something larger than the sum of their parts. They create a culture. They establish a way of doing things, how they handle money, how they raise children, how they speak to each other, how they spend their Sunday mornings. These habits are the laws of their private city. Rare detail. The Greek word for law, nomos, shares a root with the word for musical melody or tune. For the Greeks, a just law was not a shackle. It was a musical score. It provided the harmony that allowed many disparate individuals to sing together without discord. When Diotima invites us to love the laws, she is inviting us to love the harmony that sustains relationships and societies. She is asking us to appreciate the sheet music of civilization. At this stage, the lover realizes that the beauty they admired in their partner's soul did not appear out of thin air. It was shaped by the environment, the upbringing, and the values they were immersed in. You cannot have a noble person without a noble culture to nurture them. Therefore, if you love the person, you must love the soil that grew them. This expands the definition of romance significantly. It suggests that attending a town hall meeting, volunteering for a community charity, or simply maintaining a disciplined household routine are acts of eros. They are acts of love because they preserve the structures that make life beautiful. Historical fact. We can look to the legendary lawgiver Lycurgus of Sparta for an extreme example of this civic love. Lycurgus did not marry a woman. He married the city of Sparta. He designed a system of laws covering everything from education to dining that was intended to produce the most courageous and disciplined citizens in Greece. He loved the future of his people so much that, according to legend, He made the Spartans swear to keep his laws until he returned from a journey. And then he starved himself to death in exile so that he would never return, thus binding them to his beautiful laws forever. While this is grim by modern standards, it illustrates the intensity of passion one can feel for a social structure. Lycurgus saw the state as a work of art. In our personal lives, this stage manifests when a couple stops gazing into each other's eyes and starts looking outward in the same direction. They begin to fall in love with their shared values. Imagine a couple who bonds over their shared commitment to environmentalism. They compost together. They reduce waste. They teach their children to respect nature. Their love is no longer just about you and me. It is about us and the earth. Or consider a couple deeply involved in their religious faith. Their prayer, their attendance at services, and their adherence to tradition become the glue of their union. They love the ritual as much as they love each other. This structural love is far more durable than emotional infatuation. Emotions fluctuate like the weather, but shared values are like the architecture of the house. Even when the storm rages outside, when the passion cools or life gets hard, the house stands because the foundation, the nomos, is strong. The temptation at this level is to find these structures boring. We crave the drama of the early days. We think that settling down into a routine is the death of romance. We resist the discipline of the law. The transformation is to realize that this routine is actually the rhythm of love. It is the steady heartbeat that keeps the organism alive. When you wake up every day and make coffee for your partner, not because you feel a surge of dopamine, but because that is the custom of your household, you are practicing the love of institutions. You are upholding the ritual of care. This perspective also helps us choose partners more wisely. We often choose based on chemistry section 1 or personality section 8. But we rarely ask, do I love the laws this person lives by? Does this person value honesty as a non-negotiable rule? Do they value thrift? Do they value hospitality? If your laws contradict their laws, no amount of physical attraction or witty conversation will save the relationship. You will be trying to play two different melodies at the same time, resulting in noise, not music. By learning to love the laws, we also become better citizens. We stop seeing our community as just a backdrop for our personal drama. We realize that the library, the park, the school board, and the voting booth are vessels of beauty. They are the mechanisms that allow human beings to rise above their baser instincts. Diotima wants us to see that the beauty of a well-run household or a just society is a brother to the beauty of a fine face. It is the same principle of proportion and harmony, just writ large. So, the next time you feel a sense of peace while following a good routine, or a sense of pride in a community tradition, recognize that feeling. It is eros. You are falling in love with the invisible architecture of the good. You are moving from the love of the players to the love of the game itself. Section 12. Seeing beauty in discipline and order. We continue our ascent into the realm of abstractions. Having recognized the beauty in laws and customs, the lover's mind becomes even more refined. We now move to section 12, seeing beauty in discipline and order. At this stage, the focus shifts from the external institutions like the state or the household to the internal principle that makes them work. That principle is order, or, as the Greeks called it, cosmos. We tend to think of discipline as a punishment or a chore. We associate it with strict teachers, grueling diets, or military boot camps. It feels like the opposite of freedom. But to the Platonic eye, discipline is the creator of beauty. Without discipline, there is only chaos, and chaos is ugly. Think of a messy room. Clothes are piled on the floor, books are scattered, and trash is overflowing. It is unpleasant to be in. It stresses the mind. Now, think of that same room after it has been cleaned and organized. Everything is in its place. The light hits the clean surfaces. There is a sense of calm and possibility. What has changed? The objects are the same, but the arrangement is different. Order has been imposed. That order is beautiful. Rare detail. The Greek word cosmos is fascinating because it has a double meaning. It means universe or world order, but it also means adornment or decoration. It is the root of our modern word, cosmetics. For the Greeks, to make something beautiful cosmetic was to bring it into order. Cosmic. Putting on makeup was an act of organizing the face. Arranging the stars was an act of organizing the sky. Beauty is order. In the context of love, this realization changes how we view our relationships and ourselves. We realize that a beautiful relationship is not a lucky accident. It is a disciplined construction. It requires the cosmetics of patience, timing, and restraint. Historical fact. We can look to the ancient rivalry between Athens and Sparta, but also to the internal philosophy of the Pythagoreans. The Pythagoreans believed that the entire universe was made of numbers and ratios. They believed that music was beautiful because it followed strict mathematical rules of intervals. If you hit keys on a lyre randomly, you get noise. If you hit them according to a disciplined ratio, the octave, the fifth, you get harmony. They applied this to the soul. A musical soul was one where the passions were disciplined by reason. The lover at this stage begins to fall in love with this mathematical precision. They start to admire the structure of things more than the things themselves. In a relationship, this looks like finding beauty in boundaries. In the early stages of love temptation, we want to merge completely. We want zero boundaries. We want to text 24/7, but that is chaos. It burns out. The mature lover transformation sees the beauty in the space between the notes. They appreciate the discipline of spending time apart to recharge. They appreciate the discipline of holding back a hurtful word during an argument. They see that the restraint is what gives the relationship its dignity. This is where the charioteer image, which we will explore fully later, begins to form. The lover realizes that unbridled passion is ugly because it is formless. It is like water without a cup. It spills everywhere and is wasted. Controlled passion is beautiful because it has direction. This appreciation extends to one's own life. You might find yourself falling in love with a routine of waking up early, or a regimen of exercise, or a practice of meditation. You are not doing these things just to be healthy. You are doing them because the orderliness of the life appeals to your aesthetic sense. A disciplined day feels like a well-composed symphony. A chaotic day feels like a cacophony. The temptation here is to become rigid, to value the schedule over the person, to become a robot of efficiency. This is the shadow side of order fascism of the soul. The transformation is to see order as the trellis that allows the rose to climb. The trellis is rigid so that the rose can be wild and beautiful. Without the trellis, the rose rots in the mud. In love, the rules, monogamy, honesty, commitment are the trellis. We love them not for their own sake, but because they hold up the bloom of intimacy. When you reach this rung of the ladder, you stop resenting the hard work of love. You stop wishing it were easy and spontaneous all the time. You realize that the effort is the art, the discipline of listening when you want to shout, the discipline of forgiving when you want to hold a grudge. These are the brushstrokes of a masterpiece. Diotima is guiding us to see that the beauty of a law, section 11, is actually the beauty of the logic behind the law. We are getting closer to the mind of the architect. We are beginning to see the skeletal structure of the good. As you drift through this section, consider the areas of your life where you have resisted discipline. Consider where you have equated messiness with authenticity. Plato invites you to reconsider. He whispers that the stars do not wander randomly, they dance in a perfect circle, and if you wish to be beautiful, you must find your own orbit. Section 13. The intellectual connection beyond emotion. We have climbed a great distance. We started in the mud of physical desire, moved through the complexities of relationships, and admired the architecture of laws and customs. Now, Diotima points us toward a horizon that seems colder, yet is infinitely more stable, the vast ocean of knowledge itself, episteme. At this stage, the lover ceases to be merely a lover of people or institutions and becomes a philosopher, literally, a lover of wisdom. This transition is crucial because it marks the shift from loving the manifestations of the good to loving the source of the good. Think of it this way. You might love the light in your room, the body. You might love the lamp that holds the bulb, the person. You might love the electrical grid that powers the house, the laws. But now, you are falling in love with the principles of electricity itself, the invisible physics that make the light possible. Historical fact. This reverence for abstract knowledge was not just a theoretical ideal for Plato. It was the physical gateway to his school. When Plato founded the Academy in Athens, the first university in the Western world, he reportedly had an inscription carved above the entrance, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter here." This seems odd for a school of philosophy. Why geometry? Because geometry represents a world of perfect, eternal truths. A triangle drawn in the sand can be washed away by the tide. It is imperfect. Lines are never truly straight. But the concept of a triangle, the mathematical truth that its angles add up to 180 degrees, is indestructible. It was true before you were born, and it will be true long after the sun burns out. Plato wants us to direct our eros toward these eternal truths. Why? Because they are the only things that will never break your heart. Human beings, no matter how noble, are subject to change. They get sick, they change their minds, they age, they die. Even laws and institutions can be corrupted or overthrown by war. If you anchor your happiness solely in these things, you are anchoring your boat in shifting sand. But knowledge, science, logic, truth is bedrock. Rare detail. The Greeks made a sharp distinction between doxa opinion and episteme knowledge. Doxa is what most of us live with, the fluctuating beliefs based on what we see on the news or hear from neighbors. It is unstable. Episteme is knowledge that has been tied down by a chain of reasoning. In the Meno dialogue, Socrates compares opinions to the statues of Daedalus' mythical automata that were so lifelike they would run away if you didn't tie them down. Opinions run away when life gets hard. Knowledge stays put. When the lover ascends to this rung, they find a deep, nourishing comfort in learning. This is the nerd phase of the soul, and it is beautiful. Have you ever been so engrossed in a subject, whether it's coding, gardening, history, or astrophysics, that you forgot to eat? You forgot your heartbreak. You forgot your ego. That state of flow is a pure form of eros. You are courting the truth. In a modern context, this stage offers a sanctuary from the volatility of modern romance. We often put too much pressure on our partners to be our everything, our best friend, our lover, our therapist, our entertainment. It is too much weight for one human to bear. But when you have a passionate intellectual life, when you love a subject as much as you love a person, you take the pressure off the relationship. You are not desperate for your partner to entertain you because you are entertained by the mysteries of the universe. This intellectual connection can also become a bond between partners. This is the saposexual dynamic. The most erotic organ in the human body is the brain. When you watch your partner solve a complex problem, or when you learn something new together, you are connecting on a plane that bypasses the decay of the flesh. You are meeting in the realm of the forms. However, the temptation here is to become an ivory tower recluse, to love books more than people, to become cold and clinical, treating human emotions as irrational data to be discarded. The transformation is to use knowledge to serve life. You study psychology to understand your partner better. You study engineering to build safer bridges for your community. You study philosophy to find peace in a chaotic world. Diotima describes the lover at this stage as gazing upon the vast ocean of beauty. They are no longer looking at a single beautiful boy or a single just law. They are looking at the interconnected web of all knowledge. They see how music relates to math, how math relates to stars, how stars relate to atoms. They are drunk on the majesty of the system. This is a powerful antidote to loneliness. You may be single. You may be isolated. But if you have access to the truth, if you can read, think, and explore, you are never truly alone. You are in communion with the greatest minds of history and the deepest structures of reality. So, tonight, if you feel the ache of an empty bed, try opening a difficult book. Try learning a new language. Try solving a puzzle. Do not see it as a distraction. See it as a date with the divine. You are exercising the wings of your soul, preparing for the final flight. Section 14. Taming the wild impulse within. As we ascend into the heady realms of intellect and abstract beauty, there is a risk that we might forget we are still carrying a body. We might think we have left our animal instincts behind. But Plato, ever the realist, knows that the higher you climb, the more dangerous the fall. To explain the internal war that happens when we try to transmute sexual desire into spiritual fuel, we must leave Diotima for a moment and turn to the Phaedrus, where Socrates offers the vivid allegory of the chariot. Imagine your soul is a chariot drawn by two winged horses, driven by a charioteer. The charioteer represents reason logos. His job is to hold the reins, to see the destination, and to steer the team toward the heavens where the gods dwell. One horse is white, upright, and clean-limbed. He carries his head high, has a modest nose, and eyes dark with modesty. He is a lover of honor, temperance, and decency. He needs no whip, only a verbal command. This is spirit thumos, our drive for nobility, courage, and rightful ambition. The other horse is black, crooked, heavy, and ill-constructed. He has a thick neck, a flat nose, and rare detail. His eyes are bloodshot and gray. He is hairy-eared and deaf, hardly yielding to the whip and the goad. This is appetite epithumia, our raw biological craving for food, drink, and sex. The drama of love, according to Plato, is the struggle of the charioteer to get these two horses to work together. When the chariot sees a beautiful person, the beloved, a violent reaction occurs. The black horse sees the beauty and immediately surges forward. He wants to rush in, mount the beloved, and satisfy his lust right now. He cares nothing for social rules, politeness, or the long-term good. He is pure impulse. The white horse also sees the beauty, but he is held back by shame and respect. He wants to approach the beloved with reverence, to worship them, not to consume them. The charioteer is caught in the middle, his arms nearly ripped out of their sockets. Historical fact. We must appreciate the metaphor's resonance in the ancient world. The charioteer was a figure of supreme controlled violence. In the Olympic Games, or the Pythian Games at Delphi, the chariot race was the most dangerous event. Crashes were frequent and often fatal. A great charioteer was not someone who killed his horses or made them weak. He was someone who could channel their explosive energy into precision cornering. This is key. Plato does not say we should kill the black horse. A chariot with only one horse goes in circles. We need the black horse. We need that raw, sexual, hungry energy to pull the heavy weight of the soul up the hill. Without appetite, we would be passive and lifeless. The transformation is not the eradication of desire, but the sublimation of it. The charioteer must wrestle the black horse back, pulling the bit so hard that the horse's mouth bleeds a graphic image of the pain of self-discipline. Only after being checked again and again does the black horse humble itself. Eventually, it learns to follow the lead of reason. This allegory explains the internal torture we feel when we are lovesick. Part of us wants to send the risky text at 2 a.m. black horse. Part of us wants to maintain our dignity and wait white horse. Part of us is trying to figure out if this relationship is actually good for us, charioteer. Plato validates this struggle. He tells us, you are not crazy. You are just a multi-part creature trying to fly. This perspective is incredibly useful for modern sexual ethics. We often swing between two extremes: repression pretending we don't have desires and indulgence acting on every impulse because it feels natural. The charioteer chooses a third path mastery. When you feel a surge of lust or jealousy, do not shame yourself. Acknowledge it. Ah, the black horse is pulling. But do not drop the reins. Use that energy. Can you take that sexual frustration and channel it into a grueling workout? Can you take that obsession and pour it into your art? That is the charioteer redirecting the horse's momentum. Furthermore, this section teaches us about the divine madness of love. Plato argues that when the charioteer finally controls the horses and approaches the beloved with reverence, something magical happens. The stream of beauty enters the lover's eyes, warms the soul, and begins to melt the hard casing around the soul's wings. The feathers begin to grow again. This is the ultimate goal of the chariot, not just to drive on the ground, but to gain enough speed and lift to take flight. Love, when properly harnessed, regrows the wings we lost when we fell from heaven. The temptation is to let the black horse drive. If he does, you crash. You end up in relationships defined by drama, addiction, and regret. The transformation is to become a skilled driver. To say, I have these desires, but I am not ruled by them. I decide where this chariot goes. As you lie in bed, visualize your own internal team. Is your white horse ambition, honor asleep? Is your black horse appetite running wild? Is your charioteer reason awake at the wheel? To love well, you must first bring order to your own vehicle. Only a steady chariot can carry a passenger safely to the stars. Section 15. Remembering our soul's true home. Why does beauty affect us so deeply? Why does a certain face, a certain piece of music, or a certain landscape bring tears to our eyes? Why do we sometimes meet a stranger and feel an instant, shocking recognition, as if we have known them for 1,000 years? To answer this, we enter the mystical heart of Platonism, the theory of anamnesis. Recollection. Plato suggests that our souls are immortal. Before we were born into these heavy, clumsy bodies, our souls traveled in the train of the gods. We flew through the heavens, driving our chariots, and we gazed upon the plain of truth. We saw justice itself. We saw temperance itself, and we saw beauty shining, clear, and breathtaking. But through some accident or inability to control our horses, as seen in section 14, we lost our wings. We fell from the sky, plummeting down until we were caught in earthly bodies, what Plato calls the oyster shell of the flesh. Historical fact. In Greek mythology, the boundary between the world of the dead or the unborn and the living is the river Lethe, forgetfulness. Before a soul is reborn, it drinks from this river and forgets everything it saw in the heavens. We enter this life with amnesia. We think we are blank slates, but in this is the crucial hope: we do not forget everything completely. There are traces left, deep, dormant memories buried in the subconscious. This explains the phenomenon of learning. Socrates argues in the Meno that we never truly learn anything new. We only remember what we once knew. That click of understanding when you solve a math problem that is a memory unlocking. And love. Love is the most powerful trigger for this memory. When we see a beautiful person on earth, we are struck by awe because that person reminds us of the true beauty we saw in heaven. The lover is not just looking at a pretty face. They are seeing a souvenir from their lost home. Rare detail. The Greek word for truth is aletheia. It is a compound word, so, literally, truth. Aletheia is unforgetfulness. It is the act of clawing back the memory that the river Lethe stole from us. This theory radically changes how we interpret the physical symptoms of falling in love. When you meet someone who embodies a fraction of that divine beauty, perhaps in their symmetry, their grace, or their wisdom, your soul goes into shock. It recognizes the pattern of home. Rare detail. In the Phaedrus, Socrates offers a surprisingly graphic description of this spiritual biology. He says that when the soul sees beauty, it begins to itch and throb, much like the gums of a teething infant. This is because the stumps of the wings we lost are beginning to swell and push through the skin of the soul. The heat of desire is actually the heat of germination. The pain of longing is the pain of regrowth. We interpret it as, I need to have sex with this person. But the soul is screaming, I am remembering how to fly. This explains the obsessive nature of the lover. They do not want to leave the side of the beloved because, in that person's presence, the pain of the teething subsides and the joy of the memory returns. When they are apart, the openings of the passages dry up and close, trapping the growing wings. which causes intense throbbing and anguish. This is why we treat our beloveds like gods. In a sense, they are statues of the gods. If you followed Zeus in the previous life, you love someone who carries the stamp of Zeus. If you followed Ares, you love someone who carries the stamp of Ares. You are worshiping the memory of the divine through the medium of the human. Historical fact. This concept of anamnesis was closely linked to the Orphic and Pythagorean mysteries that influenced Plato. These mystery cults believed that the body was a tomb, soma, sema, and that the soul was trapped in a cycle of reincarnation. The goal of life was to purify the soul so it could escape the wheel of birth and death. For Plato, falling in love is one of the few shocks powerful enough to wake us up in the tomb. It is the skylight opening. Therefore, the transformation at this stage is to honor the beloved, but not to burden them with divinity. They are not the destination. They are the reminder. They are the souvenir postcard from a place you once lived. When you feel that uncanny sense of déjà vu with a new partner, that feeling of I know you, trust it. It is your soul recognizing a fellow traveler from the procession of the gods. But remember, you are not falling into them. You are falling upward with them. Section 16. Moving beyond specific individuals. We have now reached a high altitude in our ascent. The air is thinner, the light is sharper. The lover has recognized that physical beauty is a reminder of divine beauty, and that the relationship is a school for virtue. Now, we arrive at a stage that is perhaps the most difficult for the modern heart to accept, the stage of autonomy. In the lower stages, love is a dependency. We need the object. We are like solar-powered machines that shut down when the sun goes behind a cloud. If our partner leaves, or dies, or stops loving us, our world collapses. We feel we have lost the source of our goodness, but Diotima beckons us to a place of greater resilience. She suggests that once the lover has learned to see the beauty of souls and the beauty of laws, they begin to internalize the source of that beauty. They stop needing a specific external trigger to feel the presence of the good. Imagine a person who needs a candle to see in the dark. They are terrified of the wind blowing it out. They guard the candle obsessively. This is the anxious lover. Now, imagine a person who has become a lantern. The light comes from within. They can walk through the storm, and the light remains steady. Section 16 is about becoming the lantern. This does not mean you stop loving people. It means you stop using people to feel alive. You generate the energy of Eros independently. You become a self-moved mover. Historical fact. This ideal aligns with the Greek concept of autarkia, self-sufficiency, which was the gold standard for the sage in almost all schools of ancient philosophy, from the Cynics to the Stoics. However, the Platonic version is unique. It is not the self-sufficiency of a hermit who rejects the world. It is the self-sufficiency of a sun. The sun does not need to eat the planets to shine. It shines because that is its nature, and the planets orbit it because of its abundance. At this stage, the lover can sit in an empty room and feel the same swelling of the heart, the same creative drive, and the same connection to the divine that they used to feel only when staring into the eyes of a lover. They can access the divine madness at will through contemplation, art, or meditation. Rare detail. There is a moment in the Symposium where Alcibiades complains that Socrates doesn't care if Alcibiades is the most beautiful man in Athens. Socrates is hybristic, arrogant in his indifference. But it isn't arrogance. It is that Socrates has moved beyond the need for specific instances. He loves Alcibiades, but he does not need Alcibiades to be happy. This drives Alcibiades crazy, because Alcibiades is still stuck in the transactional stage of, I give you beauty, you give me attention. Socrates has opted out of the transaction. In our modern lives, achieving this state is the ultimate cure for codependency. The codependent says, I cannot exist without you. The Platonic lover says, I cherish you, but I am whole without you. This freedom allows for a purer form of love, when you don't need anything from your partner, not their validation, not their money, not their reassurance. You are free to love them for exactly who they are. You are not extracting resources from them. You are overflowing onto them. The temptation here is detachment to the point of coldness. We might mistake not needing for not caring. We might become aloof, thinking we are superior to human connection. The transformation is to realize that because you are full, you have more to give. You become a steady rock for others. This stage is also where the fear of loss evaporates. If the beauty lives in your ability to perceive it, rather than in the object itself, then beauty can never be taken from you. You can lose the flower, but you haven't lost the spring. As you practice this, try to find moments where you generate love without a target. Sit in a park and just turn on the beam of appreciation. Love the light on the grass. Love the sound of traffic. Love the sensation of breath. Prove to yourself that the engine is yours. You are the driver of the chariot, not the passenger. Section 17. The vast ocean of limitless beauty. We have now broken the chains of the specific. We are no longer enslaved to one body, one person, or even one set of laws. The lover stands on a cliff edge, looking out at the horizon. Diotima urges us to turn our gaze toward the wide ocean of beauty. This metaphor, the vast ocean pelagos, is one of the most sublime images in all of philosophy. Before this stage, we were looking at puddles. A beautiful boy is a puddle. A beautiful poem is a pond. A beautiful marriage is a lake. They are enclosed. They have shores. They dry up. But the principle of beauty itself is an ocean. It stretches in all directions, boundless and inexhaustible. Diotima warns Socrates not to be like a servant, loving the beauty of a boy or a man or of one set of customs, and being a slave, mean and narrow-minded. Rare detail. The Greek text uses the word oikites, house slave, here. It implies a domestic, petty servitude. The person who only loves their child, their spouse, or their country is effectively a house slave to their own bias. They are trapped in the household of the particular. Plato wants us to step out of the house and into the wild. When the lover turns toward this wide sea, a massive psychological shift occurs. They stop picking and choosing. They stop engaging in the petty criticism of, this is ugly, this is pretty. Instead, they are overwhelmed by the sheer quantity and unity of beauty in the universe. They see the beauty in the structure of a leaf. They see the beauty in the mathematical ratio of a galaxy. They see the beauty in an act of courage by a stranger. They see the beauty in a complex scientific theory. And they see that it is all the same water. What is the result of this vision? Diotima says the lover will bring forth many fair and magnificent thoughts and notions in boundless love of wisdom. This is the stage of prolific creativity. When you are no longer obsessed with one person, your energy is released. You have a surplus of eros. You become a fountain of ideas. This explains why many great artists and scientists speak of a feeling of oceanic connection when they work. They are not trying to impress a girlfriend. They are surfing the tides of the universe. Historical fact. This stage mirrors the intellectual expansion of the Hellenistic world that would follow Plato. The classical Greek world was fragmented into city-states polis, each with its own jealous gods and laws. But the philosophical mind was moving toward cosmopolitanism, being a citizen of the cosmos. The Stoics, influenced by this line of thinking, would later argue that the wise man is at home anywhere in the universe because he sees the same rational nature logos everywhere. In our modern context, the vast ocean is the antidote to tribalism and partisanship. We live in a world that wants us to pick a side. My team is beautiful, your team is ugly. My religion is true, yours is false. The Platonic lover stands on the shore and laughs at these distinctions. They see the gold thread of divinity running through all cultures, all eras, and all forms. This is a terrifyingly open state to be in. It means letting go of your preferences. It means admitting that the person you hate might have a beautiful soul. It means admitting that the political ideology you oppose might have a structural elegance. It requires a massive expansion of the heart. The temptation is to drown, to become so open, so abstract, that you lose touch with reality. To say, everything is beautiful in a way that ignores suffering and evil. The transformation is to maintain your swim stroke, to navigate the ocean with purpose, to use this universal vision to bring specific, magnificent things into the world. As you drift to sleep or into deep thought, visualize the walls of your life falling away, the walls of your preferences, your type, your biases. Visualize the water rushing in, not a scary flood, but a warm, golden liquid. You are floating in the raw material of creation. You are no longer a beggar asking for a cup of water. You are swimming in the source. Section 18. Encountering the source of all love. And now, the summit, the climax of the symposium, the moment for which all the previous steps, the bodies, the souls, the laws, the sciences were merely preparation. Diotima changes her tone. She speaks now in the language of the mysteries. She warns Socrates that while he may have been able to follow her this far, she is not sure if he can handle the final revelation, the apopteia, the final viewing. Suddenly, the lover catches sight of something wondrously beautiful in its nature. This is the form of beauty, autotekalon. It is important to understand what this is not. It is not a really beautiful face. It is not a sunset. It is not a mathematical equation. It is not a god like Zeus or Aphrodite who are depicted with human forms. Diotima defines it by what it lacks. 1. It does not wax or wane. It is not born, and it does not die. Unlike every beautiful thing we have ever loved which fades, wrinkles, or breaks, this beauty is eternal and constant. 2. It is not relative. It is not beautiful from this angle, but ugly from that. It is not beautiful to some, but ugly to others. It is not beautiful today, but ugly tomorrow. It is beautiful, period. Absolute. 3. It is not physical. It has no hands, no face, no body. It does not exist in anything else, not in a creature, not in the earth, not in the heaven. Rare detail. Diotima uses the term monoides, of one single form, or uniform. Everything else in our life is mixed. A person is a mix of good and bad, beautiful and plain. A law is a mix of justice and compromise. But this form is unmixed. It is pure, unalloyed essence. It is the white light before it hits the prism and breaks into colors. This is a difficult concept for the modern mind, which is used to materialism. We think things are real only if we can touch them. Plato argues the opposite. The things we touch are shadows. The form is the only thing that is really real. Imagine you have spent your whole life looking at photos of water. You have seen photos of lakes, rivers, rain. You think you know water. Then, suddenly, you are thrown into the ocean. You realize the photos were just flat, 2D representations of a wet, deep, overwhelming reality. The form of beauty is the wetness. The people we loved were just the photos. Historical fact. This moment of revelation parallels the climax of the Eleusinian Mysteries, the most famous religious rites of ancient Greece. Initiates would spend days in fasting and ritual purification. At the height of the ceremony, in a blaze of torchlight, the Hierophant high priest would reveal a sacred object, some say a simple ear of wheat, in silence. The shock of seeing the simple truth after the complex journey was said to change the initiate forever, conquering their fear of death. Plato is engaging in a philosophical mystery. He is revealing the ear of wheat. What happens to the lover when they see this? They stop being seduced by illusions. What if man had eyes to see the true beauty? Diotima asks, pure and clear and unalloyed, not clogged with the pollutions of mortality and all the colors and vanities of human life. At this moment, the temptation of love is destroyed forever. You can never again be tricked into thinking that a pair of shoes, or a status symbol, or a plastic surgery, or even a romantic partner is the answer to your soul's longing. You have seen the answer. You know that these earthly things are just tiny reflections. This is the ultimate liberation. It is the end of neediness, but it is not the end of action. As we will see in the next section, touching this truth does not make you a zombie. It makes you a creator of true virtue. For now, simply try to conceive of it. Close your eyes. Strip away every image of a face, a body, a landscape. Strip away color. Strip away sound. What is left the quality of goodness itself? A silent, radiant hum of perfection that sustains the universe. That is what you have been chasing in every date, every kiss, every ambition. You were chasing the hem of God's garment, and now you are looking at the face. Section 19, Birthing True Virtue in the Soul. We have reached the summit. The lover has gazed upon the form of beauty, that absolute, colorless, formless essence of the good. But a critical question remains. So what? What is the point of this mystical vision? Is the philosopher meant to stay on the mountaintop, eyes rolled back in ecstasy, useless to the world? Diotima's answer is a resounding no. This is where Platonism distinguishes itself from many other forms of mysticism. The goal is not just to see the truth. The goal is to reproduce with it. Recall the earlier sections where we discussed the drive to procreate, to have children of the body, or children of the mind. Diotima returns to this metaphor now, but with a massive upgrade. She explains that when a man touches only the image of beauty, a beautiful body, he can only give birth to the image of virtue. If you love a person only for their looks, the virtue you produce is shallow. You might act kind to impress them an image of kindness. You might act brave to win them an image of courage, but it is performative. It is fragile. It is a phantom virtue that disappears the moment the audience is gone. But, Diotima argues, when the lover touches the truth, the form of beauty, he gives birth to true virtue, arete alethi. Rare detail. The Greek verb used here, ephaptomeno, implies a tactile contact. It suggests that the soul doesn't just look at the truth from a distance, it grapples with it, embraces it, and couples with it. It is a spiritual consummation. And just as a physical union produces a physical child, this spiritual union produces a reality that exists in the physical world. What does true virtue look like? It is justice that does not depend on being watched. It is courage that does not need applause. It is temperance that is practiced even in secret. This is the ultimate transformation. The temptation of love is to create a persona, a mask of goodness to seduce the world. The transformation of love is to become goodness itself, regardless of whether anyone notices. Historical fact. We see the proof of this in the life of Socrates. In 406 BC, after the naval battle of Arginusi, the Athenian assembly, in a fit of hysterical rage, wanted to illegally execute 6 generals without a trial. The mob was screaming for blood. The politicians were terrified to oppose them. Socrates happened to be serving on the council that day. He stood alone against the entire city. He refused to put the illegal motion to a vote. He was not acting brave to impress a lover. He was acting brave because he had touched the form of justice. He knew what justice was, and he could not act against it, even if it meant his death. That is the true child born of the ascent. This stage challenges us to examine the children of our own lives. We live in an era of virtual virtue, of social media activism, and performative ethics. We post the black square. We use the right hashtags. We say the right things at dinner parties. These are images of virtue. They are born from our love of public opinion, a lower form of beauty. Plato asks, what are you building when the phone is off? When you are exhausted and angry? Do you still treat your partner with kindness? That is true virtue. When you can get away with a lie that would make you money, do you tell the truth? That is true virtue. The lover who has ascended the ladder becomes a factory of this reality. They bring the perfection of the forms down into the messiness of the earth. They do not flee the world. They fertilize it. This is why the philosopher must return to the cave to borrow from another Platonic allegory. Having seen the sun, they must go back down into the dark to help others. But they go back down changed. They are no longer seduced by the shadows on the wall. They are no longer fighting over scraps. They are there to serve. In your relationships. This means moving from transactional love to generative love. You stop asking, what can I get from this person? You start asking, what goodness can we create together? Maybe you create a stable, loving family that serves as a beacon for the neighborhood. Maybe you create a business that treats its employees with genuine dignity. Maybe you create art that heals the brokenhearted. These are the legitimate offspring of a soul that has touched the divine. The journey has come full circle. We started with the biological urge to reproduce section 5. We end with the spiritual power to reproduce reality. The love that began as a scratchy, desperate need has transformed into a powerful engine of creation. You are no longer a beggar at the feast. You have become the host. Section 20. Final transformation, from mortal to immortal. We arrive at the final promise, the last words of Diotima to Socrates, and through him, to us. Throughout this entire script, we have been haunted by the specter of death. We saw it in the ancient ache for wholeness. We saw it in the desperate biological drive to have children. We saw it in the fear of losing the beloved. Every stage of the ladder has been an attempt to solve the problem of mortality. Diotima offers the solution. She says that the man who has given birth to true virtue is dear to God, Theophils, and if it is granted to any man to become immortal, he is the man. This is the endgame of Platonic love Athanasia. Immortality. But what does this mean? Does it mean you will live forever in your physical body? No. Plato is not selling a magic potion. It means that by bonding your soul to the eternal, you become eternal. Think of the metaphor of the anchor. If you anchor your ship to a drifting log, a physical body, when the log drifts away or rots, your ship is lost. If you anchor your ship to the seabed, the form of beauty, your ship holds. The part of you that loves the temporary will die. The part of you that loves the eternal cannot die, because it is united with the thing that cannot die. Historical fact. The Symposium ends with a scene that perfectly illustrates this victory over mortal weakness. As the night drags on, the other guests at the party collapse. Some leave, some fall asleep on the couches, overcome by wine and exhaustion. The flute-girl is gone. The laughter has faded. But when dawn breaks and the roosters begin to crow, only one man is still awake, Socrates. He is fresh, sober, and energetic. He is debating with Aristophanes and Agathon, forcing them to admit that the genius of comedy and tragedy is the same. As the other two finally pass out, Socrates comfortably stands up, goes to the Lyceum to wash, and spends the rest of the day discussing philosophy as if he hadn't been up all night. This is not just a display of physical stamina. It is a symbol. Socrates has transcended the cycle of getting drunk and passing out, the cycle of mortal pleasure and exhaustion. He is awake while the world sleeps. He is alive while the others are dead to the world. He has achieved the stability of the forms. This is the state of the transformed lover. They are no longer terrified of aging, because they know their true beauty. The beauty of their mind and virtue does not wrinkle. They are no longer terrified of heartbreak, because they know the source of love can never leave them. They are no longer terrified of death, because they have spent their life practicing the art of separating the soul from the heavy drag of the body. This is the ultimate comfort Platonism offers to the modern sleeper. We lie awake at night worrying about our legacy, our health, our relationships. We worry about fading away. Plato whispers, "Love the right things, and you will last." If you love the truth, you become true. If you love the good, you become good. If you love the eternal, you become immortal. The temptation was to think that love is a trap that keeps us stuck in the mud of biology. The transformation is the realization that love is the ladder out of the pit. It is the mechanism by which a mortal creature grabs hold of the divine hand and gets pulled up. As we conclude this analysis, look back down the ladder we have climbed. We started with a glance across a crowded room. We moved to the conversation. We moved to the community. We moved to the science. We moved to the ocean. We arrived at the sun. It is a long journey. You do not have to climb it all tonight, but know that the ladder exists. Know that your desire is not a mistake. It is a guidance system. Trust your eros. Don't suppress it, and don't let it run wild. Harness it. Let it lift you. The party at Agathon's house is over. The guests are sleeping. The sun is rising over Athens. And you, the lover, the student, the philosopher, you are free. And now, the ladder rests. The climbing is done. There is no more effort required of you tonight. You have looked at the beautiful body, and you have honored it. You have looked at the beautiful soul, and you have cherished it. You have looked at the vast ocean, and you have swum in its waters. Now, it is time to return to the simple, quiet beauty of rest. Feel the heaviness of your own body, not as a cage, but as an anchor, holding you safe. In this bed, feel the rhythm of your breath, the law of your own life rising and falling like the tides of that great sea. You do not need to hunt for love right now. You do not need to scheme or plan or worry. The poverty is gone. The plenty is gone. There is only the peace of the in-between. Remember the promise. The beauty you seek is not far away. It is not hidden in another person. It is not hidden in the future. It is here, in the quiet, in the dark. It is the silence behind your thoughts. It is the stillness behind your breath. You have touched the hem of the garment. You have seen the light through the window. Now, let the light dim. Let the eyes close. Let the chariot stop. The horses are fed. The wheels are still. The philosopher rests. Drift now into the world of forms, into the world of dreams, where everything is whole, where everything is beautiful, where you are always, always enough. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.